Okay, today I want to start with something a little different. We're going to really do a deep dive into the architecture and the genesis of right-wing propaganda and how an idea will be put forward with no evidence. And then the fact that an opinion show has put it forward then becomes the basis for more reporting and more commentary. We've talked about this cycle before. We're also going to look at how this one in particular includes a complete reversal of the burden of proof, where there will be an assertion made by a right-wing propagandist, in this case, Tucker Carlson. And then before you know it, his position becomes, okay, well, if you don't believe what I'm putting forward without evidence, prove that I am wrong. Which is not how burden of proof works. Okay, so let's jump right into it. This is the sequence of the positing that FBI agents were involved in, coordinated, and participated in the January 6th Trump riots. So we start with the Tucker Carlson segment from last week where he puts this forward. Let's take a look.
But strangely, some of the key people who participated on January 6th have not been charged. Look at the document. The government calls those people unindicted co-conspirators. What does that mean? Well, it means that in potentially every single case, they were FBI operatives.
Okay, so the language is, it means potentially that they were all FBI officers. There's no actual evidence of that. And there's all sorts of other reasons we went over last week why someone might not be named in an indictment. And it could relate to the sequence in which cases are being put together. It could relate to protecting someone's identity for fears of their safety. The point is, Tucker says it's possible they're all FBI agents, but he's provided no evidence that that's the case.
Really? In the Capitol on January 6th? For example, one of those unindicted co-conspirators is someone government documents identify only as person 2. According to those documents, person 2 stayed in the same hotel room as a man called Thomas Caldwell, an insurrectionist.
So again, no evidence that person 2 is an FBI agent.
A man alleged to be a member of the group the Oath Keepers. Person 2 also, quote, stormed the barricades at the Capitol on January 6th alongside Thomas Caldwell.
So understand that first Tucker says without evidence, person 2 may be an FBI agent. And then he says person 2 stormed the Capitol, therefore FBI agents stormed the Capitol, but you've not proved the first part.
The government's indictments further indicate that Caldwell, who, by the way, is a 65-year-old man, this dangerous insurrectionist, was led to believe there would be a, quote, quick reaction force also participating on January 6th. That quick reaction force, Caldwell was told, would be led by someone called Person 3, who had a hotel room and an accomplice with him. But wait, here's the interesting thing. Person 2 and Person 3 were organizers of the riot.
So again, without evidence, he says persons 2 and 3 could be FBI agents, and they stormed the Capitol and were organizers. Therefore, the FBI organized the thing.
The government knows who they are, but the government has not charged them. Why is that? You know why. They were almost certainly working for the FBI.
And then look at the language, almost certainly, but he's presented no evidence. There's no evidence.
So FBI operatives were organizing the attack on the Capitol.
No evidence.
On January 6th, according to government documents.
That's not what the government documents say. That's an interesting transition. The documents just say persons 2 and 3 were organizers. He now says, well, the documents say that they were FBI agents. The documents don't say that.
And those two are not alone. In all, Revolver News reported that there are, quote, upwards of 20 unindicted co-conspirators in the Oath Keeper indictments.
Okay, so now that is the baseline. This was the first crazy story last week where we said, where is Tucker coming up with this stuff? He's not citing any evidence. He mentions Revolver News. So the next day, now that this is starting to get attention, he brings on the guy who wrote the story for Revolver News, and pay attention to what that guy says now.
Darren Beattie heads up Revolver News. We're glad to see him tonight. Darren, thanks so much for coming on. It sounds like, according to this, I have to say, remarkable piece that you've just put up late last night, read it in bed at midnight, that the FBI was organizing the riots of January 6th.
Well, yes, it certainly suggests that possibility. And I'm hearing from...
Okay, you guys heard that, right? It's Tucker brings on the guy who's his source. Where did Tucker get the idea that FBI agents organized the Trump riots and stormed the Capitol? Well, he says he got it from this article. He brings on the guy who wrote it and he says, well, it certainly suggests that that is a possibility. That is not evidence that this is the case.
People that this is the most important and the darkest investigative piece they've seen in years.
That's another meaningless statement. He's hearing from people that this is a very dark piece. So day one is Tucker putting forward this idea. FBI agents stormed the Capitol. Revolver wrote about it. He brings on the source from Revolver, and all that the Revolver source can say is it certainly suggests that that is a possibility. We have still seen no evidence, but now it's in the ecosystem. It's now a runaway train. It's an endless feedback loop signal boost. So the next day, I mean, listen, Tucker reported on it. I think it was Tuesday. And then the Revolver News guy went on and said, oh, yeah. It certainly suggests it's a possibility on Wednesday. So then on Thursday, now we have Congressman Louis Gohmert on the floor of the House saying, we've got to investigate the FBI's involvement in this entire thing. Take a look at this.
So if there were federal agents that were involved on January 6th,
for which we have no evidence,
we really need to know what the FBI knew and when they knew it. And not only that, we need to know how much participation did any of our federal friends, either at DOJ, FBI, or any of the intel community, what kind of role were they playing?
Now, so now the train has left the station. It's a runaway train. But what's interesting is that we've been saying since January 7th, hey, you know what? There's a disproportionately high number of off-duty law enforcement that were involved in this. There's an overrepresentation of current and former members of the military that we need to look at. These right-wingers don't want to look at that. They never wanted to look at that. But now that they can, without evidence, get on this Tucker idea of it was the FBI. Tucker brings on a source. The source says, well, I don't know, maybe it's possible. Now, all of a sudden, they're demanding investigations, and it's all based on nothing. This is how they signal boost each other. Tucker does an opinion piece, and then it gets to the floor of the House in under 48 hours, Tuesday night to Thursday morning. Here's another example. This is this Sheriff Clark. Who really cares what he says? But again, the point here is it very quickly becomes the baseline for the commentaries.
They need an outside commission. You cannot have the Senate Judiciary do this. They don't know how, and they're afraid of what the FBI might have on them that they might leak. So you need an outside commission, a panel. My suggestion, for example, would be that this should be headed by Alan Dershowitz.
Okay. I mean, it's laughable that Alan Dershowitz is going to run this panel, but they were just voting against a commission to investigate what happened on January 6th. And we have lots of evidence and lots of reason to think that that should be investigated. But now, without evidence, the FBI did it, says Tucker, and he's got no sources that actually say anything definitive. Now they want a panel, and they want Alan Dershowitz heading it up. So this is how it works. It's all signal boosted on nothing. It's built on nothing. And then as it continued, Tucker Carlson eventually pulls a bait and switch. Tucker knows he can't actually prove any of this because there's no evidence for it. He then flips it around and says, well, prove us wrong. If we're wrong, prove us wrong. Tucker, that's not how burden of proof works, but he doesn't care. Here we go.
They became hysterical when we mentioned it. You can't say that, they screamed. That's not allowed. The geniuses at Twitter weighed in to inform us that the people we had described as agents of the FBI were in fact just FBI informants. So shut up.
Okay, now, if that's even true, that's a completely different thing. The FBI regularly has all sorts of bad people working as informants with the promise or suggestion that maybe you'll get less of a sentence or maybe whatever. But if that's even true, those are not FBI agents. And to suggest that makes absolutely no sense, if that's even true.
Hilarious. But we won't shut up, and we shouldn't. It could not be more obvious at this point that the government is in fact hiding something, probably quite a few things. So best to abandon the theatrics and find out what they are hiding. That's our job. To many in corporate media who claim that we are spreading Russian disinformation, instead, please calmly answer these three questions. First, how many of the so-called insurrectionists on January 6th had a relationship with the FBI? How many of these FBI moles encouraged others that day to break the law at the Capitol? We haven't heard anyone answer these questions or even address them. If the answer is none, if none of the protesters were secretly working with the FBI that day, then we were wrong.
So we know that there was at least one FBI informant that was there. But that doesn't prove Tucker's case. That tells us these were bad enough people who were on the radar of the FBI that at least one was functioning as an informant. It does nothing to prove Tucker's case, and now he shifts the burden of proof.
And we will apologize for it sincerely. We'll admit it immediately. But if the answer is not none, and we're pretty sure it isn't none, then people who claim otherwise are liars and hacks and should leave the public stage immediately because they have betrayed their readers and viewers.
Right.
2, if the Justice Department knew there were going to be protesters massing at the Capitol that day, and it's clear they did know, then why didn't they do anything to stop the riot? Why did police at the Capitol allow protesters to walk in, as video shows that they did?
Now, that's very deceptive. There are moments when police, recognizing they simply don't have the numbers to hold back protesters, moved barriers, common crowd control. It's been discussed ad nauseum here. The reason that additional forces and troops and police and officers were slow to get there was that Donald Trump took hours to actually make it happen. He had to be begged in order to do it. And Tucker's not telling you that because it doesn't help his narrative.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
What's going on here? Why is no one asking that question?
We are.
Third and finally, why can't we see the tape for ourselves? The government is hiding more than 14,000 hours of video surveillance tape that shows exactly what did happen at the Capitol that day. Why are they hiding that? And why aren't news organizations demanding to see it? You'd hate to think that NBC News, for example, or Vox, or The Atlantic, or The Washington Post, or The Daily Beast, or The New York Times, or any of them.
So this is also a red herring. I mean, we have tens of thousands of hours of what happened. I don't know how many more hours we need to watch, but we have endless hours, and we watched it live.
Are in fact working to protect the regime at the expense of the public. But unfortunately, we are starting to conclude that. Please prove us wrong.
And there it is. Please prove us wrong. And of course, when you present a case completely without any evidence and then tell others to prove you wrong, you are now completely in the paradigm of the conspiracy theorist. This is similar to the lab leak stuff. Prove it wasn't a lab leak. And until then, that's what we believe it was. Well, hold on. Do you have any evidence to actually suggest that? And so this is a classic bait and switch. He presents the case without evidence. He brings his source on who can only say it suggests the possibility that this was the case. Louis Gohmert and everybody else, Donald Jr. and everybody talks about it. And then when pushed up against the wall, all Tucker can say is, prove me wrong, prove a negative, which is inherently difficult to do. This is how it works. And you've got to be armed you have to be equipped with the tools necessary to disarm it and to understand it. Is this useful in understanding how this stuff develops? Let me know. You can find me on Twitter. I've struggled with eye strain because I do use my computer screen a lot for the work that I do. And there are some studies suggesting that blue light from screens can cause headaches or eye strain, watery eyes in some cases, even trouble falling asleep. But I've had no issues since I started using Blue Block's glasses, which filter out that blue light. And they're one of our sponsors. Blue Block's glasses are made in actual optics laboratories with an evidence-backed design. They have readers, a prescription version, non-prescription, daytime, nighttime lenses, 40 different frames to choose from. These are my Blue Block's glasses. They've been great. No more strain from the computer with Blue Block's glasses filtering out the blue light. Go to blueblocks.com/Pakman or click the link below. And there's free shipping worldwide on orders over $115. And until June 30th, you'll actually get 25% off orders over $160 and 30% off orders over $315.